I turned back slowly. "You know what happened to him?" I whispered. His eyes darkened, with memory, with something heavy and unspoken. "I was there," he said. "I saw the last night he was alive." My heart stopped. "What?" He took a step closer. "And you need to hear why he disappeared, and why he made me promise to find you." The hallway felt suddenly smaller, the air colder, my legs weaker. "Why me?" I managed to ask, his voice softened to a whisper. "Because he didn't want you raising a child alone." Silence. Complete. Suffocating silence. I stared at him, unable to breathe. Then he added, with the kind of sincerity that made my heartbeat stumble, "And because he knew one day I'd be strong enough to protect you both." The night after that awful fever scare, Mia barely slept. She kept checking on Noah every 20 minutes, touching his forehead, watching the slow rise and fall of his tiny chest, half expecting him to wake up crying again. By morning, the world was back to being loud and ordinary. Cars rushing by outside, neighbors arguing about trash bins, a dog barking like it owned the whole block. But inside her apartment, everything felt delicate, fragile, like one wrong breath could break the illusion that things were okay. She stood in the kitchen, staring at her phone again, the same cracked screen, the same mysterious message still glowing at the top. "Help is on the way." Don't worry. She hadn't deleted it. Couldn't. Her mind kept looping back to it like a song she couldn't shake. Who the hell had sent it? And how did they know she needed help right then? She made coffee, the cheap instant kind that tasted like burnt cardboard, and finally stepped outside her apartment to get some air. But the second she opened her door, she froze. Right across the street, parked way too clean for this neighborhood, was the same black SUV she swore she'd seen the night before, not moving, not tinted enough to hide. The fact that someone was inside, someone watching her place. Her stomach dropped. So fast she had to grip the doorframe. "No, this is crazy. This can't be about me. I'm nobody. I'm just a single mom who can barely keep the lights on." But it was hard to shake the feeling that something bigger was happening, something she hadn't put together yet. She took Noah to the clinic that morning for a follow-up, even though she knew it would eat the last of her grocery money for the week. The doctor said he was stable, just needed rest, fluids, and close monitoring. Mia nodded like she was fine, but her hands shook the entire time. On the way home, she kept glancing over her shoulder, half expecting another one of those black SUVs to pull up next to her. Half expecting someone to recognize her. Half expecting something she couldn't even name. By the time they got home, she was exhausted. Not physically, but in the way only fear can drain a person. She put Noah down for a nap, sat on the edge of the couch, and buried her face in her hands. For a second, she let herself think the one thought she never says out loud. I can't keep doing this alone. But she always snaps herself out of it, because she has no choice. Her fingers drifted again to her phone, to that message. Help is on the way. Her thumb hovered over the number. It had no name, no profile picture. Just a string of digits she didn't recognize. Should she call? Text? Delete it and pretend none of this ever happened? She didn't get the chance. Because right then, right when she tried convincing herself it was just a coincidence, her phone buzzed in her hand. A new message. Same unknown number. This time it said, "You're safe. I'm still watching out for him." Mia's breath caught. Watching out for him? For Noah? Her pulse thudded in her ears as she read it again and again. Someone knew her son. Someone was watching them. Someone who showed up in black SUVs in the middle of the night. And then vanished without a word. Someone who knew her, or remembered her, or owed her something she didn't understand yet. And for the first time, the fear mixed with something else, a tiny spark of recognition she couldn't place. Mia stared at the message so long her vision blurred. Her thumb trembled as she held the phone, the glow of the screen lighting up her living room like a warning sign. "You're safe. I'm still watching out for him." She whispered the words out loud, as if saying them might somehow make them make sense. But they didn't. Not even close. Her first instinct was fear. The natural kind. The kind any mother would feel when someone claimed to be watching her kid. Her stomach twisted so tight it almost hurt. But beneath that fear, there was something she hated admitting. Relief. Because someone had helped her last night. Someone did show up. Someone did get her baby to the hospital before it was too late. She clenched the phone so tightly her knuckles went white. Who are you? Why me? Why Noah? Questions that had no answers. Not yet. She grabbed her hoodie, stuffed her phone into the pocket, and stepped outside for some fresh air before anxiety swallowed her whole. The street looked perfectly normal. The usual cracked pavement, the usual trash cans, the usual flickering street lamp that no one ever bothers to fix. But the SUV from earlier was gone, vanished, like whoever was inside knew she saw them. That thought didn't help her nerves. She walked down to the corner store, pushing Noah's stroller with one hand, trying to keep her breathing steady. Inside, the cashier, an older woman named Grace who knew everyone's business, took one look at her and frowned. "Sweetheart, you look like you saw a ghost." Mia forced a smile. "Long night." Grace leaned forward, lowering her voice. "Well, I don't know what's going on, but some fancy suits were in here early this morning, asking strange questions about a young mom with a baby." Mia froze. The cold rush of dread shot through her like electricity. "What kind of questions?" she whispered. Grace shrugged. "Who you live with. What hours you're usually home. If you've had any trouble lately." Mia's heart pounded. It felt like the world tilted slightly off-center. "They said they were from some foundation," Grace added. "Didn't give a name. But they bought coffee for everyone. So hell, I didn't ask." A foundation? That didn't sound right. This felt personal, intentional, targeted. She paid for a few essentials and left the store, practically speedwalking home. Once inside her apartment, she locked the door, then locked the second lock, then slid the chain across. She stood there for a long moment, forehead pressed against the cool metal. Whoever these people were, they weren't strangers. Not really. Why else would they know where she lived? Why else would they know her son's name? Why else would they show up in the middle of the night before she even finished texting for help? She went to the couch, sat down slowly, and picked up her phone again. The message stared back at her like an open door she wasn't ready to walk through. She finally typed out 3 shaky words. "Who are you?" She hit send, heart racing, palms sweating. She expected hours of silence, maybe no reply at all. But the response came almost immediately, so fast she gasped. The message read, "Someone you helped when no one else would." Mia's breath hitched. Her mind scrambled, flipping back through memories she hadn't touched in years. Faces, names, moments. People she'd crossed paths with in a past life, a life before she became a single mother. Before rent and bills and crying babies took over everything, but she couldn't place it. Not yet. She typed again, fingers trembling. "I don't understand." "Tell me who you are." A long pause, this time. The reply didn't come in a text. It came in a call. Her phone lit up with that same unknown number, ringing in the quiet apartment like a heartbeat out of rhythm. Mia stared at it, frozen. Should she answer? Ignore it? Throw the phone out the window? But something in her gut whispered, "Pick up." So she did, slowly, cautiously, barely breathing. "Hello?" she whispered. There was a pause on the other end, soft, steady breathing, as if the person was gathering courage. Then a deep, warm voice she didn't recognize said, "Mia, it's been 2 years." Her blood ran cold. Whoever this was, they knew her name. They knew her past. They knew something she'd forgotten. Her voice cracked as she whispered, 2 years since what? The man exhaled. "Since you saved my family." Mia didn't speak. Couldn't speak. The room felt suddenly smaller, like the walls had inched closer without making a sound. Saved his family? Her? Her mind raced, flipping through every blurry memory of the last few years. The jobs, the night shifts, the shelters, the neighbors who came and went like seasons. She'd helped people before, sure, but nothing close to whatever this man was talking about. She swallowed, her throat dry. I think you have the wrong person, she whispered. The man on the other end let out a soft breath. Not annoyed, more like he expected her not to remember. He said quietly, I don't make mistakes about things like this. Mia tightened, her grip on the phone. The air felt heavy, her pulse thumped in her ears. Who are you? She repeated, voice trembling now. What do you mean I saved your family? You don't remember the winter blackout? He interrupted gently. The night half the block lost power? The night you knocked on a stranger's door and brought food because you saw the lights out, and you heard a child crying? Mia's breath hitched. The winter blackout. She remembered the cold, the dark, the silence outside, and, yes, the crying. A woman and a little girl in the apartment 2 floors down. A family no one really talked to. New tenants, kept to themselves. Mia had made extra. Soup that night. She didn't even think. She just grabbed a container, wrapped it in towels, and went downstairs. She remembered the kid, shivering, cheeks pink from the cold. She remembered handing over the warm bowl. She remembered the gratitude in the mother's exhausted eyes. But that wasn't 2 years ago. That was, 8 months back? Her confusion twisted deeper. Before she could speak, the man continued softly. That wasn't the only time, he said. You left groceries on our doorstep more than once. You gave my daughter your son's outgrown jacket. You offered to watch her when her mother was sick. A pause. You didn't even know us. A chill ran down Mia's spine. This wasn't adding. I don't understand, she whispered. I never met a man. Only a woman and a little... My wife, he said. Yeah. She never told you about me. I was in a really bad place back then. His voice softened, almost ashamed. I was working 3 different jobs, never home, barely surviving. I didn't think we'd make it through that winter. Another breath. You kept us alive. Mia's heart thudded painfully. She had no words, no clue how to respond. She just stared at the wall, unable to process the idea that her tiny acts of kindness, things she barely remembered, could matter enough to bring black SUVs to her doorstep 2 years later. You saved us, the man said again. Lower this time, almost emotional. And when I saw your message, when I saw your baby was sick, his voice cracked slightly. I promised myself, if I ever had the power to give back what you gave us, I'd do it. Mia closed her eyes, feeling the weight of everything collapse into her chest. So you're the one who sent those cars, she whispered. Yes. And you paid for the hospital? Yes. And you stayed outside my building last night? Yes. A long, trembling silence stretched between them. Mia pressed her palm to her forehead, trying to steady herself. This was too much, too intense, too unreal. Finally, she managed. Why didn't you just knock? Why not just come up and talk to me? The man hesitated, and for the first time, there was something vulnerable in his voice, something raw. Because I didn't know how to face you, he admitted. I didn't know if you'd remember me. I didn't know if you'd want me anywhere near you. A beat. And because I'm not the same man you helped back then. Mia frowned. What do you mean? He let out a slow breath. I'm the CEO of Lexton Industries now. Her heart stopped. That Lexton? The billion-dollar tech firm? The one all over the news? The one whose founder remained a mystery to the public for years? That's impossible, she whispered. It's not, he said quietly. And I've been trying to find a way to thank you for a long time. Mia's world spun. But before she could respond, his voice shifted, deeper, calmer, almost heavier. Mia, he said, I want to meet you. Face to face. No more texts, no more calls, no more shadows. Her breath tightened. Why? She whispered. The man's answer came slow, sincere, and full of something she couldn't decipher. Because you saved my family. And you don't even remember my face. A pause, then. And because after last night, I think it's time you knew the whole truth. Mia gripped the phone so tightly her fingers ached. Her knees felt weak. She lowered herself onto the edge of the bed, right next to her sleeping baby, as if being near him could steady her shaking world. The man's voice lingered in the air like smoke. Calm, familiar, unsettling in a way she couldn't explain, meet face to face. The idea made her chest tighten. She didn't even know what this guy looked like, didn't know his name, didn't know anything except that he had the power and wealth to send a convoy of black SUVs to her building in the middle of the night, and that he remembered a version of her she barely recalled. She wiped her hand across her forehead, trying to breathe normally again. What truth? She finally asked, her voice barely holding steady. What are you talking about? He didn't answer right away. All she heard was his soft inhale through the phone. Not dramatic, just a quiet, human pause that somehow made everything feel more real. Mia, he said slowly, I think it'll make more sense when I say it in person. Her pulse kicked up. Again. That's not an answer. He exhaled. No, it isn't. Another. Pause. Long enough that she thought the call had dropped. But I swear I'm not here to hurt you, he added. I'm not here to take anything from you. I'm just trying to repay something I've owed for a long time. Mia shook her head. Overwhelmed. This doesn't make sense, she whispered. You don't owe me anything. I didn't do anything special. You saved a starving child in the middle of winter. He cut in gently. You fed a woman you'd never met. You kept a family afloat when you had nothing yourself. His voice cracked again, just barely, but enough to hit her right in the chest. That's not nothing, Mia. That was everything. A hot tear slipped down her cheek. She hadn't thought about that winter in so long. Back then, she was barely surviving herself, juggling diapers, rent, 3 part-time jobs, crying in the bathroom so her baby wouldn't. Here, she didn't help them for praise. She didn't help them to be remembered. She helped because that was the kind of person she was raised to be, but hearing it reflected back at her, from a stranger she apparently saved without realizing, it hurt in a way she didn't expect. Look, she whispered shakily. My kid is okay now. He's sleeping. I don't know what else you want from me. I don't want anything, the CEO said. Quietly, just a chance to talk, to tell you what those nights did for me, for my family. Her eyes burned again. And if I say no, his voice softened. Then I'll respect that. I'll disappear. You'll never hear from me again. Mia closed her eyes. For some reason, that option hurt. She didn't know why. Maybe it was the sincerity in his tone, maybe the mystery, maybe the insane twist of fate that the man she helped as a broke stranger was now a billionaire saving her. Child? She wiped another tear from her cheek. Where would we even meet? She whispered. The man hesitated. I can come anywhere. You feel safe, she blinked. Safe. It had been so long since anyone ever asked her where she felt safe. Her shoulders slumped with exhaustion. Okay, she murmured. Tomorrow, public place. Somewhere open. Of course. There was a tiny shift in his voice. Relief. Maybe, or something she couldn't name. You pick, he said. I'll be there. She nodded to herself. Okay, 6 o'clock. The cafe on Redwood and Pine. Bright lights. Always packed. I know it, he said softly. I'll see you tomorrow. She opened her mouth to ask one more thing, his name, but the line clicked. The call ended. Mia sat there, frozen, the silence of her small apartment suddenly louder than anything she'd ever heard. She stared at the phone in her hand, the screen still glowing with the unknown number, her baby breathing quietly beside her, the city humming outside her window. Tomorrow. She was meeting a mysterious billionaire who claimed she had once saved his life and his family's. And somewhere deep inside her chest, Beneath the anxiety and confusion and disbelief, a tiny spark lit up. Not fear, not panic. Something else. Something like hope. That night, after the long shift and the long walk home, Lena sat on the little couch she'd picked up from a yard sale. Ethan was finally asleep, his tiny chest rising and falling with those soft, fragile breaths toddlers make when they're exhausted from crying. The apartment was quiet, except for the cheap refrigerator making that clicking sound it always made before it cooled the room just a little too much. She wrapped the thin blanket tighter around her shoulders and stared at the dim lamp, the only light she could afford to keep on. Her mind wandered to earlier that day, the panic, the fever, the way Ethan's body felt almost too hot to touch. Every time he coughed, her heart tightened. Every time he whimpered, she felt a kind of fear she didn't even know existed before she became a mother. She whispered to herself, almost like a confession, "I can't lose him. I can't let anything happen to him." But the fear wasn't just about his health. It was the weight of everything else. Rent creeping up, groceries getting smaller, the bills piling like unwanted reminders of how tight life had become. She wasn't scared of hard work. She'd been doing that her whole life. But being a single mom in a country where everything cost more every month, that hit differently. Still, every morning, she pulled herself together. Because mothers do that. They patch themselves up quietly without anyone noticing. She looked at her cracked phone screen lying on the table. It buzzed earlier with a reminder to pay a medical bill she still hadn't managed to touch. She exhaled deeply and whispered, "Not today. Maybe next week. I'll figure something out." Lena had always been the type to figure things out. But she didn't know that life was about to shift, in a way she didn't expect. In a way that was almost impossible to believe, because somewhere across the city, in a glass tower with polished floors and people whispering his name with respect, a man she once helped without expecting. Anything in return was looking over a message that would stop him cold, but that moment hadn't reached her yet. Not tonight. Tonight was just about exhaustion and fear and that heavy silence that comes right before destiny starts to move. Ethan let out a tiny whimper in his sleep. She moved quickly, picking him up and holding his warm little body against her chest. "It's okay, baby," she whispered into his hair. "Mama's right here." She rocked him gently, humming the tune her mother used to sing to her. A small, sad smile appeared on her face. She didn't know it yet. But in just a few hours, the world outside her window would look very different, and her life would collide with someone she'd almost forgotten. Someone who never forgot her. The next morning came too fast. Lena woke up with Ethan still sleeping on her chest. His small fingers curled around the fabric of her shirt, like he was afraid she'd disappear if he let go. Her neck ached, her back hurt, and her eyes felt heavy from barely sleeping. But she didn't move. Not yet. For a few seconds, she just watched him. Those tiny eyelashes, his soft breaths, the way his curls stuck to his forehead. His fever had dropped a little during the night, but he still felt warm, warmer than he should. She carefully laid him back on the bed and walked to the bathroom, splashing cold water on her face. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. Her hair tied back in a messy knot, dark circles under her eyes, lips dry from the lack of sleep. "This isn't forever," she whispered to her reflection. It was something she told herself every morning. In the kitchen, she opened the fridge. A half carton of milk, 2 eggs, some leftover rice from 2 nights ago. She exhaled. They'd need groceries soon, but the next paycheck wouldn't come until Friday. She cracked an egg into a pan, stirring, slowly so Ethan would have something light to eat when he woke up. Halfway through cooking, she felt the familiar vibration of her phone on the counter. Another bill reminder, another sinking feeling. She knocked the notification away without opening it. At 9 a.m., she called her job to say she wouldn't make it, and Ethan was too sick to leave with the neighbor's teenager who sometimes watched him. Her manager sighed heavily into the phone, the kind of sigh that made her stomach twist. "You've already used your emergency hours this month, Lena," he said. "I know, I'm sorry. I can't leave him today." There was a pause, then a sharper tone. All right. But we're short-staffed. If this keeps happening... He didn't finish the sentence, but he didn't have to. She felt the warning as clearly as if he'd shouted it. After the call, she sat on the edge of the couch, rubbing her forehead as anxiety pressed against her chest. Losing this job wasn't an option, not with rent due soon, not with a sick baby, not with life already stretched thin. But even through the frustration, through the fear, she stayed soft. That was Lena's strength. She didn't break easily. Around noon, Ethan woke up crying, weak, tired, feverish again. She held him against her and whispered, "We're going to get you better, okay? I promise." She checked his temperature. Too high, too dangerous. Her heart pounded. She called. Clinics, urgent cares. Everywhere wanted money she didn't have up front. The free clinic had a 6-hour wait. She paced the living room, bouncing Ethan gently while he whimpered in her arms. And then, like a desperate instinct, she grabbed her phone. She didn't know who else to turn to. She didn't have family. She didn't have savings. She only had one number she hoped, prayed, would still work. As her thumb hovered over the screen, her breath shook. "Please," she whispered. She typed a message. And across the city, someone powerful would soon stop everything he was doing the moment he saw her name light up on his phone. The message she sent was short, almost painfully short. "Ethan's really sick. I don't know what to do." Not a plea, not a demand. Just a quiet confession from a mother whose world was slipping through her fingers. Lena stared at the screen, waiting for the delivered checkmark to turn into typing dots. For a minute, nothing happened. Her stomach twisted. Maybe he changed his number. Maybe he didn't want anything to do with her anymore. Maybe... Her phone buzzed. "Where are you?" 3 words, sharp, immediate. No hesitation. Her heart beat faster. She typed back her address with trembling fingers, unsure whether she was relieved or terrified. Before she could think, before she could overanalyze the rush of anxiety in her chest, she heard Ethan cough, a deep, desperate sound that didn't belong in a 1-year-old's tiny body. She laid him gently on the couch, stroked his forehead, whispered soothing words even as fear flooded her. She kept checking the window. Nothing. Checking again. Still nothing. The seconds stretched like hours. Finally, the street outside filled with light. Bright, white, blinding. She stood up, startled. 3 cars, sleek, black, expensive, rolled to a slow, powerful stop in front of her building. Not the kind of cars that ever belonged on her street. Not the kind of cars that ever noticed people like her. Engines hummed. Doors opened. Men in dark suits stepped out. Men who looked like they belonged in corporate boardrooms or movies where billionaires needed security. Her breath caught in her throat. This couldn't be. For her. For them. One of the men walked to her door and knocked. Not loud, not demanding, just firm, controlled, professional. She froze. For a moment she couldn't move. Couldn't think. Who did she text? Who exactly had she reached out to? The knocking came again, gentler this time. "Ma'am?" the man said through the door, voice low but respectful. "We're here to assist you." Assist? Assist? Who? Lena unlocked the door with shaking hands. The man didn't push inside. He didn't crowd her. He simply glanced around the small apartment, then spotted Ethan on the couch. His expression softened, just slightly, but enough for her chest to loosen. "Is that your son?" "Yes. He's burning up. I can't afford..." "We'll take care of everything. Everything." She almost laughed at how impossible that sounded. Another man stepped forward, holding a small medical kit. He checked Ethan's temperature, felt his pulse, spoke to the others in quick, professional phrases she couldn't fully understand. It didn't feel real. Nothing about this felt real. Before she could ask anything, one of them handed her a warm blanket. "Wrap him in this. We need to move quickly." Lena's voice finally cracked open. "Who sent you?" The men exchanged a brief look, like they knew the answer, but it wasn't theirs to give. "You'll see soon," one of them said, his tone polite but final. They escorted her outside, surrounding her with the kind of protection she'd only seen in documentaries about the rich and powerful. Neighbors peeked through curtains, whispering. Lena held Ethan close as they guided her toward the middle car, the one that looked different. Shinier, heavier, more important. The back door swung open from the inside, and sitting there was a man she hadn't seen in almost 2 years, a man she barely recognized. Suit tailored, hair styled, posture powerful, presence impossible to ignore. He looked up at her, eyes sharp but warm, in a way she remembered too well. "Lena," he said softly, voice deeper than she remembered. "Get in. I've got you." Her breath stilled. Her mind froze. Her past slammed into her present. This wasn't just anyone. This was him. Lena sank into the leather seat, still clutching Ethan as if someone might try to take him away. The door shut behind her with a soft thump, too soft for how violently her heart was pounding. The man sitting beside her watched quietly. He didn't say anything at first, almost as if he didn't want to overwhelm her. But his eyes said everything. Concern, recognition, something deeper she couldn't name. Something that made her chest tighten. He leaned forward slightly, his voice low. "Let me see him." She hesitated. For a split second, instinct screamed no. She didn't know this version of him. She knew the boy he used to be. The broke young man who slept on a worn-out mattress, who apologized too often, who hid his empty fridge behind jokes. But this man? He had become someone else. Someone powerful. Someone she couldn't read anymore. Still. She shifted Ethan toward him, just enough for him to gently check the baby's breathing. His movements were careful, practiced, like someone who had seen sickness often enough to know what mattered and what didn't. "He's burning up," he murmured. "We need to get him to the hospital now." Lena swallowed, her throat tight. I know. I didn't know who else to text." A corner of his mouth lifted. Not quite a smile, more like a soft realization. "You texted the right person." The car moved. Smooth, silent. Too clean, too safe, too unreal for her world. Streetlights flickered across his face as he stared ahead, jaw tense, as if the night wasn't moving fast enough. She studied him. Carefully, quietly. Same eyes, same scar near his brow, but everything else was different. "That was your number?" she finally asked. "You still use it?" "Yeah." He glanced at her. "I kept it. Figured. If someone ever needed me again, they'd know how to find me." Someone. She didn't miss the weight in that word. Her grip tightened on Ethan as he whimpered. Instantly, the man reached for the intercom button. "Drive faster." The driver didn't argue, just pressed harder on the gas, the world outside blurring as the city rushed past. Lena leaned her head back, feeling tears gather again. "What are you even doing here?" she whispered. "How did you get cars like these? Guards like these? A life like this?" He exhaled slowly, as if he'd been waiting for her to ask. "We'll talk about that later. Right now it's about him." Ethan stirred, letting out a soft cry. The man's hand hovered instinctively, not touching but close, steadying. "He's strong," he murmured. "He's gonna pull through." "How do you know?" He paused. "Because someone strong raised him." Her chest tightened. Painfully, unexpectedly. She looked at him again. Really looked. And that's when she noticed something she hadn't before. He wasn't looking at her with pity. He wasn't looking at her with obligation. He was looking at her like he'd been waiting for this moment, waiting to repay something heavy, something old, something she had forgotten. But he never did. The car slowed. They were pulling up to a hospital, the fancy kind. The kind with private entrances, glass walls, and more security than her entire neighborhood. Her eyes widened.